Welcome everybody to Fashion in Helsinki fashion seminar. My name is Ervin Latimer. I am a designer, writer, and managing editor of Ruskeat, Tytöt, Finland's first for people of color, by people of color online platform and media. I'm also one of the founding members of a new initiative called Nordic Fashion Directory, which aims to solve some of the issues people of color face regarding inclusivity and representation in the Nordics. And we're talking today about, reflecting today about inclusivity and marginalized identities in fashion design. And with me, I'm really excited to have one of the founders and creative director of Soulland, Silas Adler. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Just spring vibes here in Copenhagen, so I'm happy.
Same here in Helsinki. And where are you? That's a cool background you have. Are you at your studio in Copenhagen, or where are you?
Yeah, right now I'm sitting in the showroom of the studio. So the studio and the showroom is in the same building. So I'm sitting here behind a painting by my good friend Charlie Roberts. It's a big crocodile, and he's riding a skateboard. So
okay, yeah, makes sense. Well, actually, that's the perfect kind of bridge to what I was going to start about. You often mention in interviews, I don't think that I read any piece about Soulland that wouldn't mention your kind of connection to skateboarding culture and how that's an important part of kind of like who you are and what has affected your work at Soulland. But I'm curious, are there, like, in Copenhagen or in Denmark, are there other subcultures or events or something like that that are Black specific that you've been able to attend, or something like this? Or it could be that skateboard culture, but I'm curious, have you during your career?
I think that what skateboard culture did for me as I moved to Copenhagen when I was 12 years old. Before that, I lived in the countryside of Denmark, and I lived in Sweden for a couple of years as well. And skateboarding was sort of like the place where in the 90s skateboarding was pretty small, but it was like a place where I didn't feel that like everyone was a misfit in some way. So there was not like this racial sort of like distancing between people. It felt like a very it was like a small closed world, but in that world it was very inclusive, and it was not there was not like age hierarchy, there was not like skill hierarchy. There was like this understanding of that we are all doing something that we love, and skateboarding is a very personal thing, and you can you do it. I mean, you're constantly competing with yourself, doing it with your friends at the same time. You know, it's this like very special thing about like something that you have in common with a lot of people, but essentially you're on your own when you're doing it. So that was really my upbringing, you know. So I mean, of course, I mean, I was part of the hip hop community as well in the 90s and in the beginning of the millennium, which was, of course, obviously is based on Black culture, but still in a place like Denmark, you are like, I mean, you are one of the few, you know.
Well, that's exactly my question.
Even though the cultures that you sort of like are based on Black culture, then you're still like here you're still one out of a few. But actually, my father he passed away when I was a teenager. But he was from Tanzania, and he was a famous drummer within the African community, the Tanzanian community here in Copenhagen. So in that sense, I mean, I also have experience from growing up, like being in an African in the Tanzanian environment of Denmark. That was like, it was a small group, but nevertheless it was like a group where there was a scene, because they had their dance group and they did like so I also like remember like really like Sukuma culture from growing up when I was a kid.
I'm really glad to hear that, because often, and it's not about the numbers, like how big is that group. I think the most important thing is that you have those connections. I think my father is African American who moved to Finland in the 70s. So obviously, like through him, I used to play basketball. So it was basketball, our African American friends, and that was the group when I was growing up where I found like those connections personally. So, but yeah, that's super important. Have you ever thought like, for example, your father's background, has that influenced your design work in any way? I'm not saying that it should. I'm just curious.
No, it's interesting because I mean, I had I mean, it's getting very personal, but which is totally fine. But I actually didn't have the best relationship with my father growing up. But I can definitely see that there is something. I mean, there's for sure something in the. I mean, there's culturally there have to be something in the way that I do things that reflect like him and the culture that he came from.
Yeah.
I've actually it's a little bit like, it's actually similar to the way I think about skateboarding, because I always talk about skateboarding, but I'm very cautious of like actually using skateboarding in the work. I use it when it's actually when I feel like it really makes sense, so I'm actually doing something that is correct in terms of the unwritten rules within the skateboard community and so on and so on. And it's a little bit like the same with the culture, like the Tanzanian culture, that I haven't used like imagery or like which is kind of like you have all this like this, which is such a big thing in fashion of the fashion houses and designers, like just taking imagery and from cultures without like really giving back. And for me, it's like it's a similar with like, I don't want to take something without doing it 100% correctly. And ultimately like engaging the people that sort of like are living with the culture, created the culture, so on. So I've thought about it a lot, but I never used any visuality or any imagery from and the tribe that my father came from was they were like hunters of these special African hedgehogs that live underground, and it's it's probably one of the most like the craziest jobs or like cultures I've known of. The tribe would go out, and then because like the sticks on the heads, like they are super long, and then they have this pattern in them. So they would like collect them, and then the medicine men would use them for different things. And the way that you sort of like the way you like caught them was that one person would hold another person's ankles, and then the next one and the next one, and then sliding down in the tunnels. You could be like maybe 5 people holding on to each other, like in the ankles, and it's like in complete darkness. And you get to the bottom where you could pick up the hedgehog, would have these like crazy long spikes. And I mean, in those tunnels there would be other things than just hedgehogs. There could be like snakes or like all kinds of stuff. And if you like caught something, you just said to the person that was a step up, like, I'm giving you something, pass it on. But you would never say what it was, because if it was like a poisonous snake, and you say, hey, I'm giving you a poisonous snake, the guy would like, tip and like lose, and you can't get out of the tunnel. and that's just like one. And like imagine how much mystique is in like in being a tribe where that's like the thing you do. I mean, you could make beautiful clothing based on that.
Exactly. What are
Yeah,
you?
but
What
I
have you?
hold it. It's like escape. I hold it so dear. I hold these stories so dear. So if I start to go down that route, then I mean, I need to. I need a couple of years of research for.
Yeah.
Start, that's yeah.
No, and but also I think often the mistake people do that, or like, how should I say, it's that connection can be done with other things than just visual prints or something like that. Because even the story that you told, it's actually a really beautiful story of trust, so there's like, that's something that you could easily use. It's not, it's not that literal, so that's
absolutely
really fascinating.
And that's what I mean, like from a culture point of view, I definitely like use the I mean, it's in me, I mean, and I won't escape it. So of course there's and also like I mean, there were also dancers and there were musicians and playing the drums and that energy, I mean, when I look back in videos and pictures from the village, and that energy of like positivity and trying to always like bring in positivity into the situations. I mean, that's definitely something that I have been doing this. And I mean, I mean, this is also, I mean, even though Tanzania is one of it's not one of the countries in Africa who's having the biggest battles, it's still a place of like great poverty and like, I mean, a lot of different diseases, and so, and then still like just keep focusing on positive and like keep trying to bring positivity to the table. And I mean, that's definitely something that I relate to in my work. And like, if things are like going uphill, we keep working and we keep like trying to have a positive view.
Yeah, but I think that's such a great example. Exactly, that it doesn't have to be literal things. It can come from the energy, from a mood, from an attitude, something like that. That's really great. So you founded Soulland in 2002, right?
Yeah, I mean, I started making t-shirts in 2002, and then my business partner Jacob, he joined in 2006. And
okay, I see.
So I mean, in the beginning I was also doing other stuff on the side.
Yeah.
But it's been a long ride.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I mean, almost 2 decades in the business. Congrats, good for you.
I feel old.
I'm curious, if you think of I mean, obviously you started small and then maybe scaled up, but I'm wondering, operating the fashion scene in the Nordics and in Scandinavia, like how big, like, I'm just gonna get real, like how, if we talk about inclusivity and representation, like how drastic has that change been? Because I can only imagine what it's been like in the early 2000s, not just castings, also positions of power, because we have to remember that racism isn't solved with just having different kinds of models. It's actually who's in the decision.
No, and I think that's like, I mean, that's really like hitting the nail. It's like the easiest way is of course with models, but like what is, and that, I mean, for me, of course, that, I mean, the image that you make with the people that you use for your campaign have to reflect the society that you're living in. And I mean, as a fashion company, which I mean, not only mine, but with a company where you have so much power, it's very important that you represent different people from society. But that's like really the icing on the cake, right?
Exactly.
And how do you make sure that you, in the way that you, both internal and external, have a policy that makes sure that you're like constantly trying to open doors for people where the industry has historically been more closed off from. And I remember like when I started, it was like my age and my skin color that was like, that I would say that in some, I mean, I don't think I'm gonna use the word against me because I used it as motivation to get things done. But nevertheless, it's something where you stand out, and not always in a positive in a positive manner. But it wasn't at all like inclusivity was not like a word that was used in the industry at all.
Okay.
At all. I don't remember it in being used in any way. And I remember like going back to the models and stuff like that. Like when you scroll through the model agencies, you're like, they didn't represent any people of color at all. So we would streetcast in the beginning to make sure that, and it was not even like to make sure that like, oh, we want to, I mean, like it feels unnatural not to like have different ethnicities in your show. I mean, like I mean, so in the beginning it was just like all the homies actually rolling through, and the backstage was a fucking party, you know, because it was like all the homies. I would put like loud music and just put like boxes of beer in the backstage, and it was so chaotic, but it was so amazing at the same time.
But that's also how
it's really like about like how can we make sure that we are working with people that like, for me it's like all about opening doors for people that where it's not about opening the doors for people, but it's about like showing the way and making sure that it's not that the door is not shut.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's also such an interesting thing, how often through creative work, at least that's what I've noticed personally working in Finland in fashion, that if you haven't had those spaces that felt they were for you, then it's that fashion show or that whatever event that you have, that then you kind of end up making them for yourself. And those are great, beautiful moments. Of course, it would be great if someone else would do those for you. And that's often, I think, if you're the first in something, if you're one of the only ones, that the sort of flip side of the coin is that there is sometimes that burden of not having all of those opportunities. But I'm glad that you've had that in Denmark. In your work.
But then there's also another aspect, and it's like how, like, across the board, like any industry or any business or any work related structure, any industry related structure, like how does that work? Well, the whole way that the system works is that you have companies where you have people that have a lot of experience, and then in order to make sure that the industries can thrive and go on, they invest in like always bringing in new talent, creating new talent that becomes people with a responsibility, and end up getting in the new talent. I mean, that's how any industry, any business, that's how it always works. I mean, if it's law, if it's finance, if it's engineering, like, I mean, where is the biggest law firms looking for the next generation at the law school? I mean, that's how it works, and that's how it always worked, and that's how you can sustain an industry. So if you're then, as an industry, not making sure that you are actively pushing talent in, then you're like, then it's almost like the same as like keeping people out.
Exactly.
So, and I can't, like, from it's almost like you can say, like, from an ego point of view, it's like, I, as part of this industry, can afford to invest in talent that represents the society that we live in. Because then in 5-10 years, the people that are gonna work in this industry there will not be like a diverse thinking in the industry, and then the industry can sustain.
Exactly.
Even from like even from like a completely, if you're like super capitalistic, super egoistic, like only thinking about how you could make the most money in the long term, even if that's your foundation, even then you need to make sure that you are training talent with a very diverse mindset, because otherwise your industry will, and your company or whatever you're doing will be irrelevant within the near future. That's how I see it right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, I'm not 100% egoistic. I'm not like someone that only cares about the money or growth or anything like that. Also, from a human point of view, of course, make sure that you represent and especially focus on the people that have been marginalized, if it's because of skin, culture, religion, sexuality, etc. Make sure that they feel that you can be part of making a space in the industry you're working where they can feel secure, you know. And how can you do that as a small company? Well, of course, there's hiring, but when you're a very, very small company, hiring is where it's hard to make a big impact in the short run. I mean, it's hard to. I mean, if you have 5 employees, of course you can do something for those 5 employees, but it's harder to do something that trickles out in the industry. But one thing where, like, no matter how small you will always work with people that are maybe not in the company, but that you work with, and that can be a stylist or a production manager or event. Like, there's so many different people that you will work with or collaborate with, and there you can really think about, okay, can I actively make sure that I'm bringing in talent that represent minorities when I'm doing these projects? Because then for one thing, I'm bringing in new talent, but I'm also giving experience to that person that they can maybe jump to the next job and the next job, and like sort of like start to spread some energies, you know. So that's and also then of course there's like, yeah, but okay, when, like, what's your philosophy of working with people? Is that something where you want to work with people, even people that you're working with external, that you want to work with them on like one thing here, one thing there? Or are you really looking to like work on those long-time partnerships? And for us, it's all about the last thing, because that's really where you like are building each other up, you know. So I think that's one thing where it's like, you are as a company stupid if you're not looking into how you can make sure that you really are like representing in the way that you work with the, but also, I mean, of course, also in hiring, also in everything you do, but that's just something that you don't need a strategy to do that.
No, and it's such a, I have to say, like, even though it's a serious thing that you're talking about, I'm literally just smiling when I'm hearing you talk, because there's such a passion when you talk about these things. And it's very rare, I think, in a fashion context that you hear these types of conversations, because I think often, you know, when we talk about representation, it's exactly like we said earlier, it's models or something that's like easy for people to understand, something that supports, like you mentioned, capitalism, because I think it's like an easy thing to kind of like check from a checklist, just to be like, okay, we have, you know, better castings, etc. We don't need to do anything else. And like you said, it's most important is kind of like that other stuff that's behind the scenes. So
I mean, that's my motivation, but I've just been thinking about it so much. It's like that's why I said, like, even from like a capitalist no feeling framework, like talent is all about making sure that you really have talent that reflect the society that you're gonna sell your products to.
Yeah, exactly.
Simple as that. But the fashion industry is also really like, and I mean, I felt it a lot when I started, and I feel it even more now, that is really like an industry that's undergoing serious generation shifts, and you can feel it now more than ever before. And you can also feel that there's like a shift of power. You have people from my generation. I'm in my mid-30s, so you have like people that came up the same way as I. And I mean, this is all over the world in fashion in creative industries. You have people with a similar upbringing that came up in the same period as me that are going from being like the kids in the corner to like get jobs to actually being in a position of power. And then you still have like the sort of the generation before that, and so much it's changing right now. And I think that a lot will change within the next 10 years as well, because when you come up to that point where you actually are in a position of power, then you can really, really turn up the pace,
Yeah, exactly. And then it's going to be almost like a domino effect, I think.
It's going to be a domino effect, absolutely.
I mean, we could talk about this stuff endlessly, and I seriously hope that we have a chance to talk about it more in the future. But at this point, I think that was a kind of like a great final note that I think, like exactly like you said, that the kind of reckoning, I think for sure is coming, and I think the new generation will show that. This has been such a great and such an interesting discussion. I sincerely thank you that you were able to take the time to have a discussion with me.
Absolutely.
And
mine.
I wish you all the best with the new season, and yeah, take care.
Thank you very much. Likewise. Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.